Okay, we have the next guest speaker. Let me see. And hello, Alex,
Hey,
or
Cap.
AvsA.eth. Am I pronouncing that correctly, AvsA? Or
I
A?
don't know how to pronounce AvsA. That's just like 4 letters. You can call me Alex. That's okay.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us, man. I'm super excited to talk to you in the light of our epic program that is about to go live, service provider program that
Yes, I'm very excited for that.
you are the creator of. So, can you just let's dive right in? Can you just give us like a 1 minute thing for those of those who don't know what service provider program is? 1 minute
Sure.
pitch.
So I previously I was a public good steward, and as a public good stewards, we were like just trying to like give out grants for people, and I could see that through the process, like getting a big grant, like 50,000 or 100,000, like as a steward, maybe that's because like, maybe we are doing wrong, but as stewards, we felt that we need to do like a lot of like legwork, before you could like prove 100K grant, right? And yet, for a developing team, like that just it's not worth for you to like spend months and months and months trying to get a grant. Like I've gone on both sides of grants. Like I had to receive grants, I had to give grants. And as a developer, like it's a very bad experience for you to like not know if you're going to get a grant, when you're going to get a grant, and who do you need to talk, or what do you need to say. Like that just make grants something very hard to come by.
Yeah.
And the state of ENS about 2 years ago was that basically, if you wanted money, either you work for labs, like labs had a stream from the DAO, or you had to get grants. And the thing like the getting grants is complicated, and just not worth it. So he's talking to a lot of great developers who are telling me, look, we have a lot of we want to work with ENS. We want to give our best to ENS, but it's just not possible, right? We are not making money. We thought that we were going to maybe get some type of grant for the whole work or sell ENS domains. That's not happening. So we are gonna just have to leave the ecosystem and go elsewhere, or maybe we're gonna have to make a request directly for the DAO to give us some money. And there were at least 3 or 4 people who told me in private that they were going to go forward with that. And I soon realized that if everybody does it at the same time, it creates chaos, right? Because the first people who do it, that might be good. Maybe the second, you're not sure. Maybe the third, like you want to prove it. And actually, you prefer the third guy who came than the first, but you already proved the first. You can't take that back. And then everybody has to rush in because they are realizing, oh no, if I don't get a grant right now, I'm gonna no not gonna get a grant. And just felt that this process needed some better normalization, right? The right way to do the process would be, hey, let's decide how much we could give out to developers beforehand, and with all that, like, are we going to give $3 million, $4 million, $1 million, no $1 million? And then after we do that, then we just ask everybody to present their case, and we select, and we get the best, right? And that is the and like the process of the selection evolved. Nick was crucial in coming up with the knapsack algorithm that we use, which I think it's very cool.
Yeah.
But in short, what it is, if you don't know it, is ENS right now has approved $5 million to be given per year. That's not a one-time thing. That like we are gonna give out $5 million for any number of developers who want them, right? So like if you want to give it, and the goal is you're not going to be working with something specific. Our goal is to do it to give it to anyone who is willing to work for ENS infrastructure, even with new ideas, like present new ideas, give out things, experiment stuff, right? And for this 1 year or maybe even 2 years, you might have that budget guaranteed to come in every month, every week, every day in your wallet, as long as ENS is happy with you.
Yeah, that's a beautiful overview the program and the kind of the inspiration behind it, which I really really appreciate. Yeah, so I think it's the approved amount is $4.5 million, right? Or was it five?
Yes, I think so. Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
It's four.
yeah,
Because like the first time I was presenting, I was going to increase it like by 50%. I would go to 5.4. I had some feedback to not make those changes so big. So I think
yeah.
it was like 3 million, 4 million, or 2 million, or zero. And I think we went to 4 million. You're right.
Yeah. So the service provider program is basically for the people who want to contribute to ENS DAO on the protocol level, the infra level, the tooling, the apps, like anything goes, experimentation, research. Like, is that correct assumption?
Yes. Anything that we consider like you were working to sustain and improve and increase the ENS system, right? It's open enough that like maybe like you want to do, oh, I want to do like, I don't know, I would want to do marketing for ENS, right? That that can fit. That's a viable project, but that is also to the criteria of each steward, right? I think some have, like Nick had made it clear that he wants to work, he wants like he wants people who working on infrastructure. I would prefer developers, right? I probably it's a ranked choice voting, so I'm probably going to rank developers with like big track records above like things like, I don't know, like if you wanna just use your like pay influencers to dance with ENS videos, that's okay. I don't think you're gonna get the votes, right?
Yeah.
It's a candidate, like you're eligible for a candidate, but you're probably not gonna get the votes.
Yeah. Like whatever it is, it has to be quality service, right? And
It needs to
we're
be quality service. You need to be, so what do you need to be eligible, right? You need to be a company, it's not an individual, right? Because one of the things, so there are a lot of changes now from the last season to the next season, right? And the main one is like, and like, what you need to be eligible right now, you need to be a company. It needs to be at least, I think, $300,000 per year. That doesn't mean just 1 year. It can go to 1 year, 2 years, sometimes more, depending when we do the next renewal, right? And you need to be improving the core ENS system, right? It is about ENS as a whole, right? So it's not about, oh, like you could. It's not really, if you have like an app that you integrates ENS somehow, right? Or that you just want to be paid. It's not about public goods. It's
yeah,
you're going to be working to improve ENS. It's like what level? It's like what we wanted with the initial goal is that ENS had a really high bus factor of maybe 1 or 2, right? Meaning that if there was a like a meteor hit right when ENS Labs was having like their yearly like meeting, and there was like a meteor right down on that island, and like it exploded. Like we would, the ENS would know, the ENS would no longer work, right? And I think that's the goal, right? We want to be able make sure that if a meteor hit on the right place, on the wrong place, on the wrong time, your team will still able to do it, right? 2 years ago, we only had basically one team working, Labs, great team, but now we have 10 teams working on ENS,
yeah.
right? And I think they're doing different things, and sometimes they work overlap, sometimes it doesn't. They collaborate, but I think that's overall great.
Can I ask you? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I want to ask you. Um,
Mhm.
we're talking that we want to see quality providers, quality services, but like, how do you look at what constitutes a good service provider in terms of results? Because one type of result that we can measure is the DAO revenue. If the product, whatever is that they're building, is increasing the DAO revenue, like that's one kind of result that we could strive for. Another one could be strengthening or expanding the core infrastructure layer. Another one
Mhm.
could be, marketing. Another one could be kind of driving, like what we're doing with subnames, like driving the
Mhm.
like a widespread adoption, like scaling ENS horizontally and allowing anyone to become essentially like a ENS identity providers,
Mhm.
like whether it's wallets or something else like L2 chains and so forth. So these are all kind of different approaches which have different types of results, but I'm just curious, like how do you like categorize them? Are there some ones that are more valuable? Are there some ones that are not, I guess,
So
like not less valuable? But I'm just curious, how do you think about
yeah,
that?
so this is my personal opinion. It's not like a requirement for the program, but in my opinion, if you take a look at what has happened on ENS the past 2 years, I think the most interesting things that have happened were things that not only did not impact the revenue, but in rather you could argue that it would impact negatively, right? ENS being integrated into DNS, right? The ability of you having an ENS domain by just having a domain. That's very cool.
Yeah,
Having subdomains, right? Free, cheap subdomains, the ability for you, if you have an ENS name, you can give out 1,000,000, 1,000 off-chain names. That is very cool. Though both those things, actually, you could argue that they make like they are not bringing in revenue, right? But I think they are super interesting for the ENS ecosystem, right? And if you
yeah,
ask me, like, if there are two scenarios in 5 years' time, right? In one scenario, the DAO is making a lot of money selling NFTs, but it's otherwise just that. And the second scenario, the DAO is not making a lot of money selling .if names, but it is integrated deeply into naming systems and domain systems and username systems in uh, inside DNS, inside decentralized social networks, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's a much more interesting scenario. In that scenario, that I probably would have to rethink how it makes money, but I think that's a much more interesting scenario for ENS long term than just ENS sells like .if names.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, that's yeah, that makes sense. Um, so a service provider, like this is kind of like, I'm curious, how do you see like a service provider in terms of service provider program in terms of like um would be, and I also, we should preface this by saying like all of these are just our own opinions. Obviously
Mhm.
ENS is decentralized. Every single DAO delegate votes based on their own kind of beliefs and expertise. So we're just here to share our viewpoints and what we think are important stuff. Um, and yeah, I'm curious, do you see service provider program providing like a 1 year service to build something, and then once it's done, like we have to build the next thing? Or is there like, should service providers expect like a kind of recurring on a yearly basis for a certain thing that they run? uh,
Oh, I
I
think
mean,
it's like
it's a kind of weird question, I guess, but I'm
so.
curious about
Here's
your
the thing,
thoughts.
right? When you become a candidate for like I want to get 300K a year, right, from ENS service, right? What you're not proposing, you want to get 300K
Yeah,
and then you're going to deliver something, right, for building one specific project, right? What you're doing is that you're going to do ongoing service for ENS for as long as ENS wants you to have that service, and your cost, your overall cost is 300K, right?
yeah,
And whenever, and I think we can see that because I think so. The stream started in February, so it means that everyone who is a service provider has been already working for a service provider for longer than a year, right?
yeah,
And I think, and they will keep working on that until this thing is renewed. So you need to think about this renewal not really as okay, that's a new thing you need to do, but rather just as like for existing providers, it's almost like annual performance review in which you have to present to your boss what you've been doing, what you want to expect to like what you want to do next year, and they will decide like if you're if you are going to stick on the job or not, and also a scenario for new and oncoming candidates to become to say, look, I want this job also, right? So I rather that people think it as more as an ongoing job where you're paid to build, you're paid to do something, and you're probably going to keep building it until one of those things happen. Either uh, your service comes up for renewal and the DAO votes not to renew your thing, or you do something to piss off the DAO and the DAO votes to fire you, right?
Yeah.
So I think, and that is the purpose of the program. The purpose of the program is to give some stability for developers so that they can sort of think, look, as long as we are doing good work, and as
Yeah.
long as the DAO has money, and the DAO is approving those programs, we are gonna keep working here and we can expand and things like that.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. To have that kind of like a year safety that you do not have to think about the funding, you don't have to think about anything. You just heads down and build and ship stuff. Um,
And I think it's a good opportunity to talk about the changes from the last year from this
yes,
year,
yes, I was gonna ask you about
right?
that. How did it
So
evolve over a year?
like so I gather a lot of feedback from the service providers where like what they like, what they didn't like, from people who wanted to become service providers. And a lot of people thought, even mentioned that they would rather have more stability than more money in some senses, right? I ask everyone this question: would you rather have a longer contract or just more money up front? And almost all of them rather have like stability, right? So one of the things that we did is that we created a tranche for a 2 year extension, right? And I think you can
Yeah,
think of it of if you have so much overwhelming support from the DAO that you probably would have been elected next year anyway. So we're just keeping your next election, right?
yeah,
So that's one of the things it serves. It gives you a 2 year contract instead of one. And the second thing it serves is that a lot of people wanted to have like some more flexibility in negotiating with the DAO, meaning that the way it worked last year, it was look, you either get it or you don't get it, right? And it depends on your votes and your budget, right? If if by the time like you all the projects are compared, they are ranked, and then we just start taking on the top until the budget is done. And if it happens that you just it can happen that if you ask too much money, you can be skipped, and then the next guy under you gets because they already like because you're over budget and they're not, right? And I think that's very clever because keeps people from just asking for too much, even if they know that they have the votes. But it also creates a scenario in which you either get it or you don't get it, and it's a binary thing, and it's sort of tense, and you don't know how you're gonna get it until like the last few minutes of the vote. And I wanted to have a system in which people could sort of negotiate and say, look, this is how much I'm gonna go do it. Like, and I have a range I can work with, right? We've gone through a few scenarios on how that could work, and what we ended up is you have basically two budgets. You have the minimum amount for which you are willing to work, and you have an extended budget, right? And if you get approved the extended budget, that's great. But if that doesn't fit the extended budget, that's okay because you still get a smaller budget. That does have a big problem though, because what it could encourage service providers would be to just ask a huge, enormous, like extended budget and a very tiny minimal budget, saying, "Look, I want 1.5 million, or I want $100,000, right?" Which is like the two extremes, meaning that if you get if you get a lot of votes, you're gonna get as much money as you want, and that sucks for everyone else who gets pushed out, and everyone else will get just the minimum amount until you fill out. That is not the scenario we wanted, right? So, in order to encourage people to keep giving like honest budgets, we created these two trenches, meaning that if your extended budget will basically decide if you get a 2 year contract or not, right? Because only the top people will get a 2 year contract, right? So if your extended budget is too big, it might mean that you could have gotten a 2 year contract, but because you're over budget the 2 years, now you're gonna just get you're just going to get 1 year, right? And I think that
uh-huh.
is good, right?
Yeah,
Because you have to think. I don't want to put like my budget too big, otherwise I can lose out on having like more stability, and then you rank down, right? And then of course, if you're still over budget for extended budget, then you get the basic budget, and then you have to think about your basic budget, saying, look, if your basic budget's still too big, then that's your last chance, right? You're gonna get you're not gonna get anything. So what happens in short is that there are three scenarios for a service provider, right? They might get a 2-year contract with their extended budget. They might get a 1-year contract with their extended budget, or they might have a basic budget with 1-year contract, right? So that is where the negotiation is happening with the DAO and the candidates.
Yeah, yeah. I
Or you
remember
can
we
get
were.
nothing, right? So it's four options.
Yeah, yeah. I remember there was a lot of talk about how to how to evolve this, and build the next version of the program. And I think you led the charge on that, and you've done an amazing job there.
Thank you.
So, are there any like highlights? Not highlights, but are there any like differences from the previous version that will impact these terms service providers when they're applying, other than the budgeting? Does anything come to mind other than, like, I know we've explicitly have now eligibility criteria, few
Mhm.
points. We have KPIs, which are quarterly reports, that some have been doing, but now will be a mandatory thing, to prove, like, on a quarterly basis that we are contributing and actually building. Is there anything else that I'm missing?
So what we try to do is what I like. It's called like paving the cow path, right? Instead of building a deciding where the road goes, you just see where people went, and then you just formalize that. And I think
Yeah,
that's sort of what we did with the budget requirements and with the like before we were just telling people like you need to be transparent of what we are doing, and we thought
yeah,
that almost everyone just had a quarterly report in which they presented like this is where you are, this is where you want to be, this is where like what's going to happen, right? And I think we wanted to formalize and say, look, everyone should do that. Another idea which I still feel a lot of people are not like fan of it is the idea of having KPIs. The idea of having KPIs, and I think that's important, is that you set your own KPIs as a service provider, right? You're just saying like this is what it's just a measure of how much you're able to stick to your promises, right? You're
yeah,
saying what you're saying is I hope to deliver this by August, and then when August comes around, you can you have sort of look, I promised to deliver it by August. I didn't deliver everything like I promised, but I did deliver this, and that's okay, right?
yeah.
And
Just a little comment there, something to add to that. I think we can have like a kind of global KPIs that we can measure, that are the indicators of our success. But let's face it, like, we live in crypto, like opportunities arise like left and right. Like, no one knew that, like, the AI stuff is going to explode as much as it did, with all of these frameworks and all of these, like, kind of agentic type of frameworks and whatnot. So we kind of pivoted our attention a little bit there. So that's why we were kind of late with something that we were kind of initially promised on, and got the budget for.
but
So
I think that's part of the idea of having a
yeah,
constant salary, like a constant stream, is the idea that you are not really bound to be building the stuff that you were like you're not being contracted to build something to the DAO specification. You're
yeah,
contracted for doing work, and that work can evolve and you can change it. So the KPIs are not something that I think we should, and I think that can evolve with how we measure, what we measure, should we measure, how much are we tied up. But I think the goal is not really to tie people up on promises they made 1 year ago or 2 years ago. Of course, that would be absurd. It's just let's try to have some number in which you
yeah,
try to say, like, I think that's like a target. And I know people are gonna have like low targets, right? It's just like I want to do this by August, I want to launch this in this month. And then if you don't do that, I think that's okay. Like just talk, go to the community and say, look, we've changed our mind. We don't want to
Yeah.
go in this direction. We experimented and we want to go to that. Like nobody's going to create like to create a DAO vote to expel you because you change your where direction is. What we want to
Yeah.
do is if if you're not doing any report, if you're not able to present anything that you're doing, if you're not able to present where you want to be or what, then I think that's just like a symptom that probably you're not doing a great job. It's just something that helps others evaluate that you are active, you're thinking, you are setting targets for yourself, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's spot on. And I guess every successful entrepreneur or, or builder or whatever, they know like when you start working on something, it's not like unless you're creating a product that already exists and you think you can make it better, faster,
Hmm.
like cleaner UX, whatever. In that case, yeah, okay, that then you can have some kind of like a idea the direction where you're going. And even then you're gonna talk to a lot of people. Maybe you're gonna say, okay, I'm gonna go and now whatever onboard all AI agents to ENS subnames and profiles, and then in next 6 months, like whatever happens, like with AI, and you can't do that anymore, or like you discover that people don't want that, you say like, okay, we tried, like in 6 months, people don't want this. Let's pivot to something else. It's not worth losing time.
Hmm.
Like pivoting in startup world and just anywhere, I guess, is important. I mean, like Amazon started as whatever, like selling books, and if they had to deliver on their promises and KPIs, had there been a service provider, like they would be like, it's not to say that they should push for selling books, right? They just pivoted into like, and
Sure,
now they're a
sure,
multi-billion company.
and but I'm pretty sure that people inside Amazon projects, they just have to just if you're working in Amazon and you have a project to sell more books, like you're probably gonna have some internal targets, right? And
Yeah,
then there's not a problem that in that project of selling books, you realize, you know what, we should have an ebook reader, right? And that then
yeah,
you just set new targets.
exactly.
But like I think we I like maybe like I just think that we need to think of the DAO as like it's hard because like what are the metaphors you can work with the DAO, right? I like to think of the DAO as like this big enterprise, like global enterprise are doing, and like all the teams are sort of like teams inside this enterprise, right? Just like they say that the success of Apple is because every team is a tiny startup on itself, right? Because what they
Yeah,
do is that they just have lots of small teams that work as an internal startup, doing a lot of stuff that fails, and we never hear about their failures. That's why we only see their successes. I think that the DAO should work a little bit like that, where every team is their own little startup. They have ideas and they create new ideas. And sometimes like there will be times in which like we will come at the end of a term and say, look, this is great. You tried a bunch of ideas, you experimented, you failed. It's okay. We have like we but like you're just like seven out of like you're just seventh best project and you only have budget for six, and that's okay, right? You're because you can see what you did, like it's sort of like, yeah, you're not going to be with us next year, but that's okay because you can see you tried, right? And I think
yeah,
that is sort of how how I think of the DAO, right? There always should be space for the best teams to continue working on cool stuff, but we need to once every year, once every 2 years, take a look at everything is who's working and say, look, we keep the best, and we the ones that aren't that great, we just replace with newcomers who seem
yeah,
to be doing good job. And I think that that creates a healthy ecosystem and keeps people honest.
yeah, absolutely, 100%. I agree with you. Like, yeah,
I
and I like this frame, like kind of mental model for thinking. Like you have kind of one kind of, let's call it DAO, or like an authority, which is comprised of like many delegates that represent the will of the people, essentially, that got their tokens delegated to them by every single holder, and they essentially vote on what's going to happen, what's going to get built, what are the ideas that we're going to test, which are the teams that we're going to support, and essentially they are the last one that are casting their votes into how things are going to play out. But like, I think I'm 100% with you on this. I'm curious how this, and yeah, we can wrap it here. We've been going on for a while. I'm just curious, like, how do you see this entire service provider program evolving? In a sense, there's been like a little talk about, like, do we have like a, graduates, like service providers, then graduates? Do we have something like, how does like the final form of a service provider program look like to you? Maybe like in the ideal
So
version, maybe the next 5 years, maybe not the
sure,
ideal
sure.
version.
I think that we need to have on a service provider, we need to have like a smaller on ramp, especially because we increase the minimum budget, right? I think anyone, the minimum budget for you to work at a company is 300K. We think that if you're having below that, you're not even like company, you're probably just two guys doing like work, right? I think there should be a space like under that. I would call that talent or scholarships
Yes.
or something like that, in which instead of having a company, we just have like we have, let's say, $300,000 as a budget, and it works exactly the same, but it's for individuals, and we give us a salary. Like I'm gonna do this. I want 40K per year, right? I want to do this. I want 100K per year, right? And then and then that can be lots of things. I want to write a newsletter. I wanna take care of the socials. I wanna help manage the KPIs and help do the forum or whatever. Anything that needs being
E-
done, you can just go
Education,
through
case
that, right?
studies.
Education or case studies. Like you're just like we had that as the scholars, which I think went great. And I think
Yeah.
after that, we should probably take care of the other side, which is the big one, right? The service providers works until I think 1.4, $1.3 million. And that was a deliberate choice to include the ask that few service providers made. The idea that maybe if it's more than that, maybe like how do we deal with that, right? Is it once like a per case basis or not, or maybe, and I think that could work in like in the future. Maybe everything on the DAO, like the whole yearly budget of the DAO, could be decided as a knapsack theorem, right? Maybe what
Mm.
should do is that we should make some calculation based on past revenue and what the endowment base, and say, look, we have for this year we can spend $20 million, right? And then we just vote on everything once, right? And that would include ENS labs, which I think should be, of course, priority. That should maybe include the working
Yeah.
group budgets, right? Like working group budgets have to like they do budgets like in an off cycle weird way every 6 months. Maybe that should be like over there with like maybe we should put everything together, right? And that is how the DAO keeps their budget in a same format without like exploding it. I don't know, but I think if the service provider keeps being successful, I think we could consider either of those scenarios, right? Either we create separate service providers for like things larger and things smaller, or we just put everything together in a giant knapsack pile. Just say, hey, wreck everything.
Yeah, we'll see how it works out, but I think,
Then I get to
yeah.
hate it. Having to
I think
rank 100 people and 100 projects. And
yeah, I think whoever is in charge, I think the meta governance stewards are gonna kill us if we had them. But I think public goods had like more than 100 or 200 submissions for projects, so they went through all of them, and like, God knows if we at some point have something like that for with a budget of like millions and millions of dollars, how that would look like. um but yeah, man, it's so cool to talk to you. I could do this for hours. Spence is not gonna join us, I think, because he's not answering my texts. So I think you're the last guest. We can take maybe just a few more minutes to wrap things up. I think what we're doing here, you've kickstarted this whole thing, and I think it's novel. I think it's innovative. I think it's just like very bold thing to try, because there's obviously a lot of money involved. But I think
Mhm.
so far, without like super, like just the first version of it, I think it's been such a success. So many good teams were funded. So many cool, things have been created. I think what you're mentioning right now, with how we organize everything, I think Blockful is trying to solve that. I think their kind of mantra is like solving human coordination problem. So they've been super helpful to the DAO. Like, just I don't want to like name anyone and kind of exclude anyone from the mix, but I think we've had a major success. And I think we're on a good track. I think it will take some time. It'll take a few iterations. We'll mess up somewhere along the way with some stuff. There's no doubt about that. But at the end of the day, I think this will evolve into something amazing, and we'll always have you to thank for that, as a creator.
Can I give a broader perspective that I think I see?
Go ahead.
So I think like you're talking like, oh, how AI to is like the current bell of the fed, right? Everyone is like AI. And sort of like blockchain was like went to the sidelines, like blockchain was super important 2 years ago. And we all know that like AI is like the new one, right?
Yeah.
And I do feel that blockchain, because blockchain was so focused on the monetary thing, like I think a lot of the projects are still trying to figure out, okay, what is the problem that we solve? And I think the problem that we solve, and we solve it very well, is something that blockchain as a whole solves since the beginning, is the is governance, right? Is the ability of having transparent governance in a way that is uncorruptible and transparent and everyone can see. And I think the world needs this, because every country you see that we are in a governance crisis, right? In which everyone is like, oh no, like my governance is not working, or it's too corrupt, or the
Yep.
system elects the wrong people, and the way we need to solve that is through more transparent, democratic, and probably open source governance, right? And I think the DAO, like ENS, what I love about the ENS DAO, not only because it works, but because it can work as a model that other people can copy to other DAOs, and which could copy to other areas outside blockchain in the future. Because if you think about it, what the DAO creates a public good, which is a naming service, right? Part of this public good is basically paid by taxes, right? What do you do when you pay the NS name? You are paying a tax to serve this public good, and then that money goes to a fund, which goes to another, which goes to a DAO, and then there's a vote, and then
Yep.
everyone who is a citizen, right, having an ENS, so having an ENS token is your proof of citizen, what allows you to vote. Having an ENS name is the public goods that you're taxed on, right? And
Yeah.
basically, like, as a citizen, you can vote where that money goes. And we are seeing like what is the best way, what is the method of election, what is the method to count the votes, how do we do it? We vote on everything directly. Do we vote through stewards? Do we select stewards and then the stewards make decisions? Do we make multiple different things, right? And this is
Oh,
Leo, everyone.
hello.
And my point is that, and I think that's my goal, right? I think we are trying to build something that works for everyone, and I think ENS can be a great example of that, because what I want is people to then look back and say, look, ENS does it, right? I pay my taxes on ENS and I can see where the money goes. So why can't my local government do it, right? And I think that's what I hope we can like solve on long term on blockchain
Yeah. I
for little
think we're
Leo. So when he grows up, he'll have like things that work.
absolutely, man, dude. I'm so in tune with your vision, and hopefully it comes true. I guess like we'll see on the countrywide level with countries, governments, and whatnot. But let's figure it out first in our own little world, like blockchains, and I think we're doing a great
Exactly.
job.
It's It's not crazy. Like Brazil is like the next. Brazil is running an experiment in which we are putting our currency online in what is basically just Ethereum sidechain, right? They are doing what is just like an Ethereum, like a private Ethereum blockchain, which will be run by multiple institutions in the country, right? And then you could have DAOs inside it, right? There's nothing
Yeah.
that say you couldn't have DAOs inside it, and or you couldn't put like a municipality inside it, which will be running with the Brazilian real. And I think it's exciting. It is interesting, and I think we need to work thinking that look, if we do a great job, other people will copy or a good example.
Yeah, there's a ton that can be learned and will be learned from the DAOs. I think there's like a ton of information, valuable stuff, valuable tests and experiments and everything that we're doing that will be essentially kind of, you know, like even more, like make it better. And I think someone will just do a gigantic research at some point, and I think hopefully in the next like decade or so, a couple of decades, countries start adopting this on a like a nationwide levels. But we'll see. That's a very optimistic future that I align with. I'd like to think that will happen as well. And yeah, but I guess we'll see. You don't have to sell me on governance and corruption stuff. Like, I don't know if you know, but there's like massive protests in Serbia going on right now. Like there's 6 million people in Serbia, and then like 1.5 million people are out on the streets almost every day or every week. So we're in a very interesting point in time where everything is sort of like everything is it is in its revolution type of phase, like including blockchains and finance and politics and everything. So it's super exciting to live in these times. But anyway, like we're kind of getting off topic here. um, I don't want to keep you since you are on dead duties, I guess.
Yeah,
um,
he always comes like at this time when he gets home. He comes here to tell me that like time to work is over, and now I'm on daddy
Do you know,
daddy time.
the other time I swear I have the same kind of arrangement with my girlfriend. Anytime, like we have a pretty good understanding. I was like, I work a lot, you have to give me this. But when you come in and tell me that it's enough, I'll stop. So she doesn't bother me or anything, but once he does, I know it's like it's on, and I should stop. But okay, man, thank you
Thank
so
you
much
for
for
running
joining.
this space, and I think it was very useful for everyone. And I hope that everyone like who's watching like learned something from it.
Absolutely,
And I
this has
hope to
been.
see lots of new faces and developers working on awesome new projects to make ENS awesome.
Yes, and name chain is coming. So get ready. The ecosystem is going to be even crazier and more kind of enriched by amazing development in the ecosystem.
I
Um,
agree.
Thank you, Alex. I really appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time.
Bye bye.
Cheers.
Cheers. Ciao.
Bye.